I am heading over
We're
YouTube
live now.
myself.
We are
Great.
live. We are live now. So we're just obviously we're if you guys want to fast forward, go to probably at the 20-minute mark on the video to fast forward to where we're going to actually start the class.
We
So we're
got
just
anyone there
live,
yet?
just letting people coming in and talking. DK is in the house. I think DK is the only one in the house.
I'm almost in the house. I always forget to hit the mute when I go over to YouTube or Rumble when we go live, so I get the 10-second delay.
And Tiffany's here. Hello, Tiffany. You guys are early, front row sitters.
Just got an email. Apparently, the ACLU wrote a letter supporting Project Veritas.
Really?
Saying, yeah. Want me to forward that to you?
Yeah, please.
1 second. I have not read it yet, but the headline was very interesting.
That is extremely interesting, actually. Thank you, Tiffany. Are you referring to? Did you watch this last night? Did you watch the glitch last night?
Well, she's praying for you. That must be.
Yeah, she's praying for me. So I'm guessing she saw the interview last night, or she saw the glitch last night. I'm gonna announce it. I'm gonna announce it today too.
Cool. I got about halfway through. I got about 20 minutes into your Jim Willie interview this morning when I got caught up with other things. He's an interesting guy.
He is a very interesting guy. He bounces around a lot, and I tell you what, he is extremely knowledgeable. He's extremely knowledgeable, but you would probably conflict with him on a lot of things because he and oh no, Tiffany, no, but thank you for that. I appreciate that. No, I'm actually going to announce. I'll tell you guys early. It doesn't really matter, but I'm actually having I'm having bariatric surgery done next week. So there's a remote chance that I may not be available for next Tuesday, but I'll go into a little bit more depth. I went into more depth last night on the glitch, but thank you for your thoughts about my father. He it wasn't as, I mean, it's been difficult obviously, but it's not as hard because it was expected. So he was I mean, he was suffering for so long, and it was almost a blessing that he went, because he just was in constant pain. So you have no idea, Sue. You have no idea how he bounces off the walls. You think you do. I talked to him for 2 hours after we were supposed to talk, and because he only wanted to do like 45 minutes. He's like, let's just do 45 minutes, 45 minutes, 45 minutes. I guess, okay, all right. So I said, all right. So I'm going to cut us off hard in an hour. And he says, okay. So I ended up having to cut him off at an hour and 15. And then we just kept recording, and we were talking about, it never had a solid endpoint. So and when, it just kept going and going and going and going and going. It was like totally like the Energizer Bunny. And anyway, we ended up, I think we talked for probably 3.5, 4 hours. So yes, Sue. Yes, I think we're gonna do something similar if you watched the glitch last night.
Oh yeah, hey Sue. We wanted to do I'm gonna unveil again here for this class. So if I was Ron and I agree, I should probably show up today as a avatar, and I'll drop the mask when the show starts.
Yes, Tiffany.
Tell you what, it's a lot different doing these shows behind an avatar and doing it live. Because like when I'm behind the avatar, I'm screwing around, moving around, because I know nobody can see me when once you're on camera. You got to actually stare at the camera and not wiggle. It's a little bit different. It is easier behind the avatar.
Much easier behind the avatar.
I even have to shower and everything like that from to be on camera.
Yeah, and Tiffany, just little inside baseball. I connected Jim with Nino. Not that I'm trying to take credit for it. It's just that's how he got him. Well, I've connected. Well, it was expensive. To connect with Jim, I did it as a. What I did was I bought one of his consultations, and I don't remember how much it was, but it wasn't cheap. And
what kind of consultation does he do?
It was. I mean, he does consultations. He talks to people about it's not necessarily investment advice, but just kind of. It's basically like instead of listening to him on an interview, you get to actually talk to him, one on one. So he calls it a consultation, but that's what I did, and it was just really more of just to have a conversation. It was a little pricey, but when he found out who I was and we shared a lot of stuff together, it was interesting. We definitely clicked instantly, and I think I paid for like an hour, and we talked for 3. So, but as a result of that, I connected him with Nino. I connected him with Scott. I need to send an interview. I need to send an email to Ann Vandersteel. He wants to connect with Ann Vandersteel as well. So
Ron, you said that he and I would clash on something. What things do you think he and I would not agree on?
Well, it's not so much that you would clash from on. We talked about how you almost demand verifiable things, and you're talking about going on a limb. He goes further out on a limb than I do, but he goes way further out on a limb than I do. But he actually talks to people who he has a world full of sources, in all kinds of different countries. So
that's my impression. The only exception I would have with what I've seen from him is he'll state stuff as facts that are actually speculation, and he doesn't differentiate between the two. And I think that's the stuff where I always say, okay, maybe.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. And Sue, yes, I do. Well, I'm sure he'd let me. I'm sure he'd send it to me, but I buy his newsletter. I paid for it.
What kind of stuff? Is he global events? Talks about currencies, all that stuff.
I'll send you his most recent one. You can look at it yourself. It's like it's really long. I've been buying his somebody just sent me something. His newsletter is really good.
Speaking of newsletters, did you get that old one of mine that I just sent to you?
I saw it, but I haven't actually done anything with it.
Yeah. Well, I think you'll enjoy it because some of the economic things I talked about then are back in play today in 2022, and I think you'll see the similarities. That's why I picked that one.
I just got off. I just got done with doing my first oxygen therapy with the Livo2 system. Dude, it's crazy. I got on my treadmill, and I was breathing the oxygen for there's like an oxygen reservoir, and I was breathing the oxygen from for like 8 minutes. So it was really interesting. I when I got off, I was, man, I feel really good. I feel a sense of like, kind of a sense of good that I haven't felt in a long time. Almost like a youthful exuberance.
Yeah,
And
get those
yep,
endorphins flowing in your body again.
yeah. Yeah, the one from the Peter Hammond thing, Sue. Yes, that was very good. I thought that was exceptionally well done.
I haven't seen that one.
That's the that's the preacher from South Africa, who did about an hour and 5 minute presentation on what's going on in Ukraine.
I'm
If you
definitely
guys
gonna,
really, if you guys, I don't know how interested you guys are in the slave trade, um, and how the Khazarian mafia has been involved with the slave trade going back centuries. But the video that I uploaded today with Dr. Tony Martin, um, essentially what I did was there was two different talks that he gave, and I kind of merged them into one video. Those are fantastic. It is extremely enlightening, listening to that. And I read his book. It's been a while, but I've read his book. It was I don't want to steal his thunder because it's well worth the time to listen to him speak. He grew up, I think, in Trinidad and Tobago, and so he has a little bit of an accent. He has kind of like that Caribbean accent, but he is exceptional.
Hey, Tiffany, talking about back surgery. So it was 2016. I spent about 9 months in a wheelchair and on painkillers with a back injury. The doctors wanted to do major surgery, which would have left me a fraction of my capabilities. And I didn't want that. So I opted for nothing but an epidural to reduce the swelling. And I started rehabbing with something called the Egoscue method. And it's about 30 minutes every morning stretching. And I'm all the way back in college shape. It took me a year to learn how to walk again. But once you start doing this stuff consistently and train your body how to, how to heal itself, and avoid the major surgery. And it was the right choice. I can do, I'm doing everything from lugging scuba tanks around, lifting weights, swimming, running. And the doctor said I'd never be able to do that again. So that's my faith in the medical industry right there.
So there was, talking about doctors killed. As I recall correctly, I think there was a several years
Was it?
ago. There was like a list of scientists, doctors.
Yeah, yeah. It was more recent than that, though, wasn't it? I thought it was like only like in the last,
Hold on
like
a second.
2015.
Hold on. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look at it later because I'm live right now. Sorry.
Yeah, I learned about the Egoscue method. I went to high school with John Lynch, who's played 19 years in the NFL, probably make the Pro Bowl or the Hall of Fame. He's now the GM of the 49ers. Well, in high school, he had a back problem, and he started going to this guy named Peter Egoscue. And if a guy could play in the NFL without the surgery, I figured it's got to be good for something. And this Egoscue's now got clinics all over the country. And they're pretty nice people there. They even let my dog come in.
Mm. They let your dog in?
Yeah, you pay for like 8 sessions, so they teach you how to do all the exercises, and then you buy about $300 worth of equipment, and then you just do it on your own. And a lot of people, go to on an ongoing basis. But once you learn the exercises, I don't need to be spending the money anymore. I've referred a few friends to them and had nothing but good results. Tiffany's, yours lower back or upper back?
Lower. Oh, Amy is in the house. So nice to see you, Amy. I'm glad the tornadoes didn't wipe you away.
I saw a video of one of those tornadoes that basically just sucked up an entire pond. All the water just gone.
Really?
That was pretty cool to see.
You know,
Look
I
at
don't.
those
Do
emojis.
do you remember who Amy is?
Yeah, I mean, she's been one of our regulars here, but is it someone we've met in person or no?
I've met her in person. She's the one. She is the person that I stayed with in Mississippi when I had my
Yeah, the one
procedure done.
we talked on the phone for like a long time.
Yeah,
That's that Amy. Okay,
that's Amy.
Sorry, Amy. I should have remembered that right away.
Uh,
she's a cool chick.
She's a very cool chick. She's one of my favorite chicks. And there is Tracy in the house.
Yeah, Sue's asking about that vertical plane crash in China. I did see that a bunch of times. I have no idea what the heck caused it, though. Has anybody heard?
Chinese plane doing a vertical drop to crash? No, I haven't even seen that.
I got to pull that up for you. Hang on.
Have you talked to Mr. Gibbs today?
I have not. Spoke with him yesterday. He was good to go.
Oh, I'm going to call him just to kind of touch base. He hasn't... straight to voicemail. Yeah, who really knows? Now I'm like curious. Did you find the link?
Yeah, I'm coming right now. Yeah, I'm putting it in right this minute.
Because I want to check that out.
It's only 1 minute.
That's fine.
Yeah, planes don't go down straight down like that. You know, it's either a pilot. I don't even know a plane could fly that way. So it wasn't a pilot going straight down because I don't think it can. So something was really funky about that, and I have not heard any speculation of how it happened yet. Of course, it happened in China. So are we ever going to get the truth?
Do we ever get the truth or anything in China?
Not too often. I ever tell you my old economist joke about China?
Oh, hold on 1 second. I'm playing carrying on.
Yourself for my joke?
No, I want to watch the.
I'll put it up here for our guests.
Holy crap! Oh, you already did. Oh. Okay. So it's really not much.
Yeah, that would be homicide. You're right, Tracy. Yeah, nobody tells the truth. Who would have figured there would be the Russians telling the truth about the biolabs? That story came out like on day 2 of the Russian invasion, and I was teaching a class that night, 2 days after it started, and I had.
What was the 20,000 feet in a minute? How many people were on it?
I don't have the details.
132. Interesting. Well, you know what Q says about plane crashes is that 70% of them are deliberate.
Well, the question is, who was on board?
Yeah.
I would imagine rumors will be coming out any day now. If it's anybody who worked at the Wuhan lab.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Well,
kind of
you
where I'm
know,
going.
it was interesting. Somebody I think it was Maddie that was telling me about um, the MH370. The all the people on MH370, not all of them, but the bulk of them were scientists who studied um, like HIV research.
I have heard that one. I believe that's actually verified.
Hmm. Amy, are you still with us? And if so, have the storms passed over you?
Hey, Kikio. And
Kikio's in the
Derek is
house.
here.
Is his brother here? Is Kikio's brother coming? And there is Douglas. Why am I?
Look at that serious look on his face.
Why
Doug's got
is
his
this
game
thing?
face on today.
I am. I'm trying to make it so that he's big.
Got to go to the gym for that.
There we go.
Serious problem with you, Warhamster. We'll talk later.
What'd I do this
Gotta
time?
go to the gym.
Ah.
I told my wife, though, that she and I are going to learn how to scuba dive someday soon.
Yeah, that's definitely going to happen.
And she's like, well, I
Kikio
don't know how
says
to
he's
swim.
coming.
You don't need to know how to swim. Just start moving your feet.
A little bit of swimming skill helps, and more importantly, it's comfort at being in the water and being underwater.
Yeah,
That's the big thing, is the mental part.
Yet.
Sorry, I've actually taught people to dive that did not know how to swim before. It's a bit of a challenge, but you got to have a lot of patience. They get through it. A lot of time in the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, was that aircraft a 737? I don't know.
Yes, well, that's what it said at the video.
Okay, I didn't see it. Well, if a 737 is coming down straight like that, and it gets down in, and if it's going that fast, if it's just sending 20,000 feet, I mean, I'm surprised that it had any wings if it did, or maybe the wings tore off. I don't know.
It didn't look like it was coming down from that high, but I mean,
Well,
from
if it
where
was
the video
coming down
started.
vertical.
Yeah. Well, should I? I think I should unmask.
Let's see here. Well, we've got 22 people here, so.
Yeah, and hello to those in the chat room who said hi, Doug, when I got on.
So today we actually are going to have a reveal party. The War Hamster is going to reveal his face.
With that big buildup.
If he reveals his face and it's Bruce Jenner, I'm going to be very upset.
That's Bruce
Jenner.
Jenner.
Here, let's go back to let's go back to big screens then for that. So that is the War Hamster.
Hey everyone.
Good to see a friend.
I was telling Ron it's a lot harder to do these videos when you're not hiding behind an avatar. You actually have to pay attention.
So we're gonna go back to this format because Doug is the primary. He is the teacher, and we want to keep the focus on him. So hello everybody, welcome to the Constitution class number 16, Article 2, Section 2, and today we will be going over the Commander-in-Chief, oversight of the executive branch by the states to the U.S. Senate and State of the Union, and faithfully execute. So if you guys want to follow along, you can go into the description, and we have the link to the Constitution in the description if you don't have your pocket Constitution. So with that, Mr. Gibbs.
Good to see you guys. You know, it's funny because I do a class on Tuesday mornings in Fallbrook. Afterwards, students always take me out to lunch, and then I have to, like get out of there by a certain time to make it here on time. And I actually left earlier than I ever have before. It was like 5 to 2, and I didn't even get my food yet, so I had them box it up so I could just leave with it. And yet here I am running through the house. Hooker. It's like the traffic. It's like it knows. It's like the traffic knows and wants to make it so that I get in here in the nick of time. I don't know what it is, but it's good to see you. Enough of my first world problem. How are you gentlemen doing?
Very well.
Good to
I have
see
to
you.
tell you, it's very interesting. I got a piece of equipment. I ordered it last week, and it came in preparation for my procedure that I'm doing next week.
Mhm.
And what it does is it's kind of like a hyperbaric oxygen thing. It's slightly different from hyperbaric oxygen, but I did it for the first time today, and I did it about an hour and a half ago. And essentially what it does is it saturates the body with oxygen. And I got to tell you, I have been walking around in a fog for the better part of years. Just the older you get, the more foggier you get. And I did 8 minutes of this oxygen therapy where I was exercising and breathing this oxygen. And man, I got to tell you, I feel like $1,000,000. I feel so good, and I'm so clear headed right now. And I know I just so much better, but man, it's the difference is tremendously noticeable. So I'm fantastic. So, by the way, some of you may or may not know, but I announced this last night on the glitch, but I'm actually having bariatric surgery next week on Monday. So I'm going to reduce the size of my stomach because I'm tired of fighting that battle, and I'm not going to rely exclusively on that. But that is, I'm going to use that tool or that weapon in the arsenal to hopefully live a much live a more healthy lifestyle. War Hamster has seen pictures of me when I was in my prime, and actually, I'd say that the best shape of my life I was ever in was about 2.5 years ago. And he's seen those pictures, and he can verify that I'm not I don't enjoy being overweight, and I'm tired of fighting the roller coaster battle. So I'm just going to do this
And I most certainly will vouch that the pictures
Yeah.
I have seen were impressive. There's a little bit of muscle going on there.
A lot of muscle going on, actually. And Douglas has actually seen me in that condition, and he may or may not remember the day that I had the knee injury when I was like, man, I was so great this morning, but I can't put any weight on my knee anymore. That was the day of the Constitution class. I was coming back from Vegas.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
My prime was high school and my Navy years, and about the 5 years following the Navy. So basically, my 20s and early 30s. I even rode bulls for a while in my early 30s. Had a 6-pack, but then for some reason in my mid 40s, I decided to turn in my 6-pack and accept a keg. It's a mini keg, but nonetheless, it's not a 6-pack anymore. But part of it is getting old, and part of it is just I'm not active and I don't eat right and all that jazz. But I do get excited on those occasions where I look down and I see my toes without a mirror. All right. That all said, let's get to work. We got Constitution stuff to do.
Oh, they're already going after Doug the bull rider.
Yeah. I did it for about 2 years, and I never got into any circuit. It was all amateur. It was all for fun. But let's just say when I first started, it was the baby bulls, and they were kicking my ass. So 8 seconds. What's that? So yeah. Well, we'll say that. But anyway, all right. Article 2, Section 2. Yeah, that's an interesting part of my life. I actually won a dance contest back then too. It's all kinds of interesting stories. But anyway, all right. Article 2, Section 2.
Careful with that. We may actually have to ask for a demonstration of the dancing.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you don't want to see it now.
That may require a camera demonstration.
The dance that I won the contest with was a line dance called the Tush Push. Trust me, you don't want to see it.
Yeah, I think I'm just for the description of it, I'm gonna have to agree with Doug. I don't want to see that.
Well, now I got to look it up. I got to see what it looks like on YouTube here right now.
Yeah, I knew back then. I was a rocker, and then for some reason I looked good in a cowboy hat, and the women were great, and I was separated from my wife, and it was a time of my life where I decided to sow those oats, those wild oats, I guess, in a sense. So I don't talk about all of those stories around my wife. Let's just say that. But anyway, we got back together, and we've had when we went through our tough times, and then about then in 2005, our marriage really turned around with some stuff.
I thought marriage was just once you got married, everything was happy.
Yeah, no, first 21 years of my marriage, it was a war zone. Yeah, I tell people there's 2 words to keep your wife happy, or 2 words that for a good marriage. Yes, dear. But early on in my marriage, it was duck and weave. So, all right, folks. Let's get
Article
to
2,
work.
Section 2.
Yeah. The president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states. Okay, so right there is telling us the militia belongs to states normally. Okay. So the president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. Now, I contend that the when called into actual service of the United States only applies to the militia for 2 reasons. Number one, because of the way it's worded. And number 2, and Mr. Ron Partain, when is the United States military in the actual service of the United States?
The United States military is in the service of the United States at all times, I thought.
At all times, right. So that phrase wouldn't even apply there. He's always commander-in-chief over the military, U.S. military, in other words. Always. Okay. But when it comes to the state militias, when they're called into the actual service of the United States. Now, if you go back to Article 1, Section 8, real quick, probably about a little bit past halfway.
Doug, can I ask a question here? So obviously the militias are the people. Where does
the militias? There's 2 types of militia. You have your organized militia and your unorganized militia.
So would like the National Guard be considered the organized militia?
According to the U.S. Code, yes.
Okay.
And really, when it comes to them being called forth, that's applying to the organized militia, the militias that fought in the Revolutionary War, things like that, right? Your organized militia. What happened was in the beginning, it was an unorganized militia, as we are now as citizens. It was angry farmers, it was angry storekeepers, so forth, right? But it was a mob. It was just an angry mob. And what happened in the Revolutionary War when it was just an angry mob? They were getting their butts kicked. So what Washington did is he organized the militia. He created battalions, he created companies, so on and so forth, and created an enlistment system. So the organized militia are part of an organized system. That doesn't mean that in the American Revolution, the militia stopped being also farmers and merchants, and they were also a part of it. The unorganized militia also participated in the Revolutionary War once it was organized, but the main thrust, the ones that were in charge, the ones that were doing the main battles, the ones that were working with the commanders and the generals and all that, that was the organized militia. And each state back then had its own militia. Now understand, prior to the American Revolution, they each had their own state militias also. There was no U.S. military. The militias were the military, but remember, the states are their own sovereign little countries. So the state militia is the military for each of those sovereign little countries. What was the main reason they had militias? To protect themselves from each other. They were sovereign countries. Things weren't going well sometimes. You want to talk, remember the preamble. What does it say? Ensure domestic tranquility, right?
I have a question.
Sure.
This is just a random question. Was there ever a time when any of the colonies, like outside of the Civil War, was there ever a time in any of the colonies, like were ever like discussing war against another colony?
There were actually skirmishes over Commerce a few times where they were putting troops on state lines and to protect because Commerce was the biggest fight between the states. The states, as well in colonies, was they wanted to protect their own manufacturing, so on and so forth. So there were light skirmishes. I'm not going to say that necessarily was a civil war that was breaking out. It wasn't, but there were these confrontations that did happen. Absolutely.
Okay.
But it was always, I shouldn't say always, almost always over commerce. You know, it's a funny thing about money, Warhamster. It's a fighting thing.
All wars are banker wars.
Yeah.
You know, I've adopted that, man.
War is a racket, Smedley Butler.
Yeah, when we get to Article 3, I'm gonna bust open a can of worms that I'm so excited about because I did some research on something and it's going to be an interesting discussion.
I could see.
We'll get to that down the road. But anyway, so we've got these militias, and remember the militia. You have your organized militia, you have your unorganized militia. You, my friends, you're part of the unorganized militia. There is actually still to this day organized state militias, not just the National Guard. There is actually a state militia for 24 of the states. 26 of them don't have state militias anymore, or never did in some cases. But there are 24 states from the last time I read that still have state militias. California is one of them. And California's state militia, in fact, is the only one that actually trains with live ammunition, which is, to me, an interesting trivia thing because you would think of all states, it wouldn't be California. But and I actually have two friends that are members of the state militia. One of them, they are attached to a unit that's out of 29 Palms, and another one who's attached to a unit out of the desert out there by Hesperia, Victorville somewhere. And so the organized militia does exist. They don't get paid. It's volunteer. Get together on the weekends, things like that. I don't know all the details. Please don't ask, exactly when they get together and the uniforms and all that. I don't know all the answers, but part of my research has been to spend time with these two gentlemen. One of them has promised me eventually that I will get to go out there to the desert and get to know the guys and get to learn from them and what it's all about. But state militias do still exist. When we say militia, I don't mean a bunch of guys that are up there in the hills and the Upper Peninsula in Michigan with pickup trucks armed with rocket launchers. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about state militia. This is a part of the state's allowed defense team. All right. Now,
has California's militia ever been deployed, like for firefights or something, anything like that?
Members have been deployed along with National Guardsmen on rare occasions, but typically it's for border disputes or for natural disasters, not deployed overseas or anything like that. That's not what they're for. That's not what the militia is for.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, with the California wildfires or something. Is that a source
stuff
of,
like that? They tend to get involved. The state militias, my friend told me, one of the most common things they do is toss sandbags. So, when there's storms and stuff, but they're there and they do exist. So, and I know the question comes up, well, what happens if there's a civil war in America and the militia, kind of belongs to the state and we're part of the militia, but we are against the state. What happens? When we get the Second Amendment, we'll talk about that. But I'm a firm believer that the organized militia, if there is a problem in this country, they're not going to line up behind tyrannical leaders, put it that way.
No.
I think they'll be right there with us when it comes to standing up for liberty. Now, that said, so get back to the point here, though. The president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called in actual service. Then I sent you over to Article 1, Section 8, a little bit past halfway, maybe about 2/3 of the way, a little bit past halfway. And it says that the Congress shall have the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. So if the militia needs to be called up for federal service, they can be, but it has to be Congress. The president doesn't say, hey, I need the militias. Congress does it. That once they are called forth, then the president becomes commander-in-chief. Then he can deploy them as he sees fit. But there's reasons here. They can't just call them up for, I don't know, lining up along a fence at Washington, D.C. or something. It says to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union. Of course, this would be with laws that are made in pursuance of the Constitution in mind. Suppress insurrections. That's the excuse of the January 6th calling forth. The problem with that was Congress called forth the National Guard at Washington, D.C. After that. And then what did they do? Sleep in the garages and stuff. Well, the problem with that was Congress called them forth. But then once they call them forth, Congress's job is over. Then the boss becomes the president. He's commander-in-chief. Trump was still commander-in-chief at that time. Think about that for a second. They called up the militia, in that case, the National Guard portion of the militia in Washington, D.C. after January 6th, before inauguration, to protect Washington, D.C., and the Congress was giving them orders on what to do. And it was not their authority. All they do is call them up. The president's the one that deploys them, puts them in action. Commander-in-chief. Commander-in-chief was Trump. So just think about that for a second. All right. So, and then it says, and repel invasion. So can the state militia or the National Guard or the Naval Guard or the Air Guard and all these other organized militia branches or groups or bodies be used at the border? Absolutely. That is an invasion, right? I think it is. With the insurrection of Antifa and BLM, could Trump have deployed them? Yeah, technically he could have. But he felt that it was best to only deploy federal agents and National Guard when it came to federal buildings. But if he really had wanted to, he could have deployed them to those zones. Of course, you got to have Congress willing to call them into the actual service first. But so now that answers another question. Martial law. Can the president call martial law? Well, he can call it, but he can't call up the militia to enforce it. Congress has to, and Congress can call them up for martial law and call them into act. But if the president's not willing to deploy them, then there's no martial law. In other words, if martial law is going to happen in the United States, it takes both bodies, Congress and the president, to make it happen. Remember, our Constitution doesn't allow unilateral decisions for the most part.
Doug, the president can use the regular military, though, if he declares martial law, can he? Because he's already commander-in-chief?
Yeah, but then you get into what is the purpose of the military? They're not supposed to be used domestically. And if you want to get real specific, you can go over to Posse Comitatus. Are you familiar with Posse Comitatus?
I am.
Okay. Posse Comitatus, I think, is a very good law in many ways. I don't agree with every single line. I don't think every single line is constitutional, but the idea that the U.S. military cannot be used domestically against the citizens, I think, is proper. So now that goes back to things like Kent State, right?
Mm-hmm.
So was it constitutional for the military to be used in those situations? I don't think so. I don't think the military, especially our ground forces, because they're the ones that really this is regarding, should be used domestically against citizens. Should they be able to operate on domestic territory for defense? Absolutely. Against an enemy. But against American citizens, even in insurrection, I don't think so. That's just...
This gets me thinking about, the CIA is not supposed to operate domestically or spy on American citizens, yet they're doing it every day.
Mm-hmm. And also, any federal agency is not supposed to operate within any county without the sheriff's permission.
I did know that.
There was someone was talking about a bill today that allows the something about federal the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, can now force the police to work with them in any given state. That's something that just happened like yesterday or today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's totally unconstitutional. Local police are supposed to be free from any federal control.
Yeah, well,
there's no authority that gives them that. There's nothing in the Constitution gives them the authority to demand that local authorities work with the federal government. And the federal government's not supposed to operate domestically anyway. The state, the internal order and prosperity of a state is up to the state. So there you go.
Clowns in action, indeed.
Yeah. So, yeah, the clowns in action are awful. This is an interesting discussion, and the reason why is because it brings us back to this idea, which we'll get to in the future, of federal supremacy. There's this idea that the federal government is supreme, that there's this ladder, and they're the top dog. And my response is no, they're the top dog on the things that's authorized to them. If it's not authorized to them, they are nothing. And it's not authorized to operate inside the states unless they do it through the militias. You'll notice when the Whiskey Rebellion happened, for example. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever read the story about the Whiskey Rebellion, right? And we've got this area where the whiskey that they're not necessarily sending to market, it's kind of locally traded. Alexander Hamilton comes up with a scheme to tax that too. And they're like, it becomes an outright armed rebellion over this tax. And George Washington shows up. And as much as I would like to say that George Washington showed up on his horse and said, hey, guys, stop doing it, and they stopped, that's not really the story. What he did is along the way, Congress had called forth militias from the surrounding and from that community. And so when George Washington showed up at that location there in what is now today Kentucky, during that rebellion, he showed up with a bunch of militiamen surrounding him that had given their oath to the Constitution and that he was their commander-in-chief at that moment because they'd been called into the actual service of the United States government for that moment. And it was for the purpose of getting back to Article 1, Section 8. Let me flip the page back here real quick. For the purpose of suppressing insurrections and executing, I don't like the word enforce, executing the laws of the Union. The law of the Union was that tax. Now, that said, the Whiskey Rebellion was successful. While they laid down their arms and the rebellion stopped, the tax was later repealed. It was a great way to make sure the government knew we don't like this. But nonetheless, George Washington, the way the stories are written, it almost sounds like he just shows up on his own on the white horse as the shining president of the United States, and he actually was surrounded by a mess load of militiamen.
I agree, Tracy. Don't touch my whiskey.
Don't touch my whiskey, man.
I can't imagine.
You notice what the priorities were back then. Mm-hmm. The things that really got rebellion set off, right? Lexington and Concord are guns. The Whiskey Rebellion are whiskey. Don't touch our guns. Don't touch our booze. Everything else, all right. But
also, don't tax us.
Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, right?
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a convenience store.
Exactly.
All right, let's get back to
certainly a store that I would like to shop in.
Yeah, a friend of mine told me that he would like to open a store called the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and he'd like to call it the ATF so that if ever he got raided by the ATF, he could say that the ATF raided the ATF. Right. But anyway, all right. So we got the president shall be commander-in-chief. What does commander-in-chief mean? It's the chief commander, right? The guy who does the deploying. It's not calling him forth. So no, the president doesn't say, all right, we're going to do this. Come on, guys. No, they got to be called forth by I'm talking militias, got to be called forth by Congress first. Once again, we don't have unilateral opportunities here in the Constitution typically. There's a handful of things that can happen unilaterally, but even they don't because they require funding. It's still a second mechanism, just maybe not immediately, such as waging war. There's still a second mechanism. The president may be able to wage war with the U.S. military unilaterally, but really it isn't unilaterally because once he runs out of money, he's got to get the money from Congress. So there's, aside from waging war, though, there really isn't any unilateral allowances in the Constitution, even when it comes to something like martial law. All right, so are any of the federal agencies legal? Asks Hamster. A handful of them. We can go through the list someday. That's a long list right now, but I would say, just at a guess, without going through the list, probably less than 10 of them are constitutional.
Border Patrol
Maybe,
is. I know
maybe
that
less
one
than
is.
half a dozen.
Border Patrol is definitely legal because we have talked about that.
Yeah, Border Patrol would be, and of course the first four, which is, the Treasury, State Department, the Treasury, the War Department. Oh, I'm sorry, Defense Department, and then the Department of Justice. So those are. And when it comes to justice, it's regarding federal justice only on federal issues. The fact that the Department of Justice gets involved in issues that are really state authorities drives me batty, but that's a discussion for another time. But yeah, there's a handful of them, but I don't know if there's many more past what we just said, if there are. And here's the thing: Department of Transportation, for example.
A little side note on the War Department. I've read the book "The Secret Team" by L. Fletcher Prouty, and he was in the War Department at the time that they changed it from the War Department to the Department of Defense.
Right.
And he said that the overwhelming majority of people who were in the military at the time and were in the Department of War or War Department, they all hated it. They despised the fact that it was changed to the War Department. They wanted
it sounded like it was putting us on our heels.
Right. It's instead of it being like an aggressive defense or an aggressive force that we had to use, that we would unleash. It turned it into a thing where we were all we were doing was just on the defense all the time.
Yeah, and when it comes to that, you got to remember with the founding fathers, it's always about balance. They were always in search of balance. You don't want a warmongering department, but you don't want, pardon my phrase, ladies, a department full of a bunch of pussies. You want, something that's strong, but it's not this aggressive, conquering whatever. So it's interesting the language they use. Because in the Constitution, right, we in the preamble in Article 1, Section 8, what does it say? To provide the common defense. Mm-hmm. So when it came to our military, in the Constitution, it's really worded in a defense manner, but yet they turn around and name the department for that the War Department. So it was almost like, yeah, we're a little defense, we're a little war. There's a balance there. That's kind of how I took it, by the way they named things, the way they use the language. What I don't know what the exact reasons why they call it the War Department instead of the Defense Department originally was, but I think, just knowing the founders, that it was probably because while the purpose of having a military is defense, you don't tell your enemies that's what your department's for.
Well, Prouty talked in there about how it essentially changed the entire attitude mm-hmm. of the entire attitude in the whole country, especially in the whole in the department itself. It just everything shifted.
Yeah, and it's funny because the attitude, you're right. For example, we want to only hit military targets. We don't want any civilian casualties. We want to be careful, that we don't do it, too mean. Meanwhile, you got Patton saying, give your life for your country. No, your job is to, make the other son of a bitch give his life for his country. I mean, die for his country. So it's a different attitude. Yeah, absolutely. And you see that. The gentleman, the man who raised me, I call him Dad. He was my stepdad. He's been my dad since I was 3. He was in the United States Marine Corps, and his attitude was that that you don't want to fight, you prefer not to get into those situations, but if it happens, you fight to win and you do whatever it takes. You don't play this, pardon the language once again, this pussy game. And so Get my computer there. So I remember when I had my first fight in the 7th grade, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before. It was 2 hits. He hit me. I hit the ground. My second fight with the same guy a couple weeks later, Dad had had a talk with me. We had discussed things, and then it went from me getting hit and hitting the ground to I was ready to fight because my dad's first question to me was, "What's the rules of a fight?" I'm like, "I don't know what you mean." He says, "What are the rules?"
There are no rules.
There are no rules.
Matt. Well, I think I think you could. It's certainly indicative of how we fought World War II. I would say World War II was the only true war that was fought where the United States did everything that they could to win as fast as they could.
Mm-hmm. And that meant civilian casualties because you
maybe,
want to make it so horrible for the other guy, they have to quit.
And maybe
that's what Hiroshima was right there.
Mm-hmm. And maybe the Civil War or the war between the states or Northern aggression or whatever you want to call it, but certainly in World War II, because as you migrated into the Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War I, it wasn't really a war. It was more of just basically a test bed for all the technology that they developed in the mid 70s and 80s. They needed a place to showcase it, so they created a war. But really, the from a historical perspective, in my opinion, Gulf War I was really more of a precursor so that they could establish a beachhead of military presence in the Middle East in preparation for what was going to happen, because I still believe with all my heart that 9/11 was inside job, and it was designed. It was an event that was designed to put U.S. hegemony in the entire Middle East, Western and Western Europe, or actually Western Asia. So
and that is a very reasonable argument, and I'm pretty close to you on that one.
Yeah. So, but anyway, because if you look, over the last 20 years, are you trying to tell me that we could beat both Japan and Germany, who had monster militaries? It took us 4 years to defeat them, but we couldn't defeat Afghanistan in 20? Really?
Yeah. Right.
Really?
There was no goal to defeat them.
Right.
Usually you get basically they just ran away to caves.
Well, when it comes to war, let me add this. Thomas Jefferson, when he talked about debt, he said that no future generation should pay the debt of or pay the debt of a past generation. But he also said the only time that debt should be accrued is in a time of war. In other words, unless there's and try not to laugh when I say this, War Hamster, unless there is an unexpected expense like war. I told you not to laugh. Unless there's this unexpected expense that a government should pay its way. There's no reason to go into debt. First of all, because the idea is you're not supposed to be, first of all, having a centralized bank you're borrowing from, first of all. So there's no need to go into debt because you're controlling your own money. But number two, if you do go beyond your expenses, war would be that situation. So based on that comment by Jefferson, even Jefferson believed that war was really the time to be borrowing money. Now, when do the bankers make all their money? When we
go to war.
Money.
Borrow it. And we borrow a whole lot more when we
go to war.
Yeah, and it's not just the bankers that make money on wars. There's an entire class of war profiteers, and it's not just the military-industrial complex. You're talking about people that sell shoes, leather, saddles, you name it.
It's good for everybody.
It is big business.
Mm-hmm. It's good for everybody. And it's even good for the politicians usually because they get a little bump in their approval rating.
The war
for the good war.
We didn't see that happening the last 3 weeks.
Well, yeah, but if there were ice cream trucks also in that war, maybe.
I don't want to be guilty of quoting a movie, but Donald Sutherland's character in the movie JFK, who actually was the personification of L. Fletcher Prouty. He says in the movie, he says the organizing principle of any society is war.
All right.
And I can't disagree with that.
And then Sue throws in, plus war is a great depopulation use. No kidding.
Oh, it actually
Got to cull the herd.
it is absolutely in fact what war is, if you really want to get technical about it, what war is, and I let's just say that it is Luciferian rituals by the people to cull the herd and blood sacrifice. I'll just leave it at that. And I don't because we're on YouTube and I don't want to.
You're definitely on the right track there. I agree with you, and I would put also the slaughter of the unborn right there in that same category.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Article 2, Section 2 continued. He may require the opinion in writing. Notice we don't want any hearsay here. See, in law, you have two things, right? You have hearsay and you have evidence. If there's no evidence, it's hearsay. So the founders are saying, we want the evidence for everything. We want everything to be in writing. So he may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments. In other words, and I know, Mr. Obama, if any of your people watching this is upsetting to you, the president doesn't know everything.
Well,
that's why he has a cabinet. That's why he has department heads. Let's work as a team. The president is not all-knowing. So he may require an opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant. Okay, so that's the end of that one. And he shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States. So these are federal crimes. You cannot understand this. The president does not have the authority to pardon non-federal crime. That's the governor. Except in cases of impeachment. So in other words, the president can pardon for federal crime, for a federal whatever, unless it was impeachment. And that's a very good thing for Richard Nixon, because he didn't get impeached. He almost did. And Ford pardoned him. And that's part of the reason, too, they wanted to make sure they got Trump on everything they could regarding impeachment.
Well, you know that there was, there's essentially 4 individuals who were rewarded with the presidency who were involved in some shape, fashion, or form in the assassination of Mr. Kennedy.
All right, Johnson, Nixon, Ford. Yeah,
Bush.
Who's the
George
fourth?
H.W. Bush.
Right? Yeah, okay. I forgot
CIA.
about the fact that he was, CIA at the time. Yeah.
Yep.
That sounded like a good trivia question.
Yeah.
Almost as good as the Daryl Strawberry question.
Almost.
Oh, Ron, you didn't hear it. Doug calls me yesterday and actually gave me that question. He didn't know. He had no idea. Yeah.
And now, yeah.
So of course I got it right, even though I missed it when Seth Keshel asked me.
That's funny.
Yeah, it is. Just for the chat, there's a baseball trivia question. Who's the only major league player to have played on all 4 teams that began in New York City? And the answer is Daryl Strawberry, the Giants, Dodgers, Mets, and Yankees. And Seth Keshel had asked me that question 2 weeks ago when I met him. We did a little quick baseball trivia. I stumped him and he stumped me. We would have gone on longer, but he's a busy guy. And then just yesterday, Doug asked me the same darn question. I never would have known it in a million years, but when he asked it to me yesterday, it was right on the tip of my mind.
When I was asked, I actually guessed like 5 different players, so I finally got Daryl Strawberry on like the 5th guess.
That's actually pretty good.
Yeah,
the fact that you got it all is impressive.
Yeah, exactly.
The one that I didn't get right, that I should have gotten right, and I bet you now Ron in the chat room will get it right, is who's the only major league player to have his first name on the back of his jersey.
And I did get that right.
The what?
And I didn't. And
that was Ichiro.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Ichiro. It's an easy one, and I
Yeah.
didn't get it when it was asked of me.
Yeah, that was Ichiro.
All right, enough of baseball.
Time,
Let's get back to work.
time out. Tracy has an interesting question.
Okay.
Says if Hunter is indicted, can he be pardoned
Yes.
by his father?
Yes.
But
If it's a
he can be
federal
pardoned.
crime, yes.
It can be pardoned
It shouldn't be.
after he's convicted.
Can't
be.
Yeah, if he's convicted, he'd have to be convicted, right?
So they can't pardon him
Sure,
for
pardon.
You can charge does not matter. It comes down to conviction. You're exactly right, Warhamster. Glad you said that. So if they charge him, hold him for trial, and he gets convicted, and he's off for the orange jumpsuit, yeah, he could be pardoned by the president of the United States.
But technically speaking, the if Biden is the president, then that could transpire. But if Biden is no longer the president, at the conviction date, it's post-conviction date, so it's all predicated on the on the conviction date.
And trials like that could take years.
Yes, they could, or not.
Well, it depends on if Judge Jackson is involved, I guess. But anyway,
it also could depend on whether or not Mr. Biden wants to go through it, or if he just wants to take the easy way out. Leave it at that.
Shoot the rabbit, get back on the main trail. These rabbit trails get rough, man. You got to start shooting rabbits. All right. He shall have power. Now, this is important stuff. I want you to understand this is another place where the 17th Amendment is a big deal.
Okay.
He shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. All right, so the Senate must agree to ratify with 2/3 of a vote any treaty. That means that the president, number one, is not king, he's not dictator, he's not a ruler. He can negotiate treaties all he wants. He can sign them all he wants, but it does not go into force. It is not effective until the Senate ratifies it. Once again, no unilateral actions, right? There's a two-step process here. President, negotiates and signs it, but it's not in force until the Senate ratifies it. Now, right now, treaties can be a very dangerous thing if you've got a bunch of knuckleheads in the Senate who's been voted in by the people because the people were fooled. Prior to 1913, 17th Amendment, the senators were not democratically voted in. They were the representatives, they were the suffrage of the states. So the state legislatures, people were in there. Do you think they're going to look at treaties a little differently than today's dirtbags? Absolutely. Because their first concern is going to be, is it in line with what the constitutional principles were? And number two, is this good or bad for our state? If there's a treaty that's going to do something that, say, interferes with state sovereignty or individual rights, those senators who were appointed by the state legislatures, because remember, our Senate would look differently in this point. If we were back to being a republic, it wouldn't be so dominated by tyrannically minded individuals, I believe, if we went back to the original Republican recipe. But so now, 17th Amendment, Reynolds v. Sims is the other one. We've got senators that would be willing to ratify a treaty that senators before definitely would not have, is my point. Because of where they came from. So 17th Amendment, once again, is huge. Mm-hmm. And the founders wanted to make sure, and you've heard me say this before, that the federal government could not do anything without direct or indirect approval by the state legislatures. That's an example. Even treaties needed to have some type of oversight by the state legislatures through their senators.
Sounds like the founding fathers did not trust the federal government. Sounds like they were probably right.
They were afraid of, it was a situation where, getting back to what I said earlier about balance, they recognized balance was huge because we needed a central government that could handle the things that a country's government would handle. because other countries, to deal with other countries, you couldn't send a 50-state delegation. You need a central government that has a figurehead, a president, who's going to meet with these leaders and so on and so forth. You want to have the central government, but you don't want the central government to be a national government with all this power that's dictating to local government and to the states and so on and so forth. So you put it in a cage. You put shackles on its ankles by limiting its authorities. The rest of the world has national governments. The rest of the world has oligarchies. The rest of the world has rulers and dictates and kings and oligarchs. America was designed to be unlike the rest of the world. But because we have to deal with the rest of the world, we needed to have someone who could communicate with them as the leader, even though he doesn't have the same kind of power as the leaders of other countries. So it was a balance here. We need somebody that has that figurehead look, but we don't want him to have that kind of power. So we're going to create this balance here. And if he does go out there and talk to them, and he decides to come to an agreement in writing with something, it's no good until the Senate's happy with it and are willing to ratify it. See, leaders from other countries, we signed this treaty, it's effective. No, not in the United States. It has to go through the Senate first. And once again, those who populate the Senate now are very different than who populated the Senate prior to the 17th Amendment. The big, giant cartel leaders of the world didn't have control over the senators prior to the 17th Amendment. Now, all you got to do is throw a lot of money into a campaign, convince voters to vote for that person, and guess what? They've got their control person in there. It's a lot easier to do.
To me, the difference is it's a centralized corruption as opposed to a localized. We had all kinds of compromised politicians, in the 1800s, but
sure,
once you got to the national political parties, and they were able to, everything became a popular vote. It was much easier to run one centralized, coordinated corruption ring as opposed to a bunch of that's really what happened.
Well, and if you want to control the Senate, you have to make corrupt a majority of both houses of the state legislatures in order to get the majority of. That's a lot of people to corrupt. But if all you got to do is throw some money into a majority of the campaigns of senators and let the people vote the corrupt people in, well, that's easy.
All you got to do is give the money to the DNC or the GOP. And they're not even, it's not even either or because they're working together. It's part of a cartel. It's a political cartel. Mm-hmm. Suppress all competition.
Yep. It's funny because I remember I had considered a congressional run against Ken Calvert, which is the Congress critter in my district. Now, he's a quote-unquote Republican, but he's not always a constitutionally minded Republican. In fact, sometimes, while he's not as bad as most of the people with D's after his names, sometimes he runs wild with them. And I was looking at possibly running, and I realized that I would probably, after doing all the research and talking to people, I was going to raise probably about $500,000. And I did an information. I had what do they call it? Committee. I can't remember the name of the committee.
Exploratory.
Yeah, that's it. Exploratory committee. So I had an exploratory committee. We did all the research. And then I had a big meeting with everybody, and like 50 people showed up, that were excited that I was considering running. And we did more research. And then after about 2 weeks, we decided we were not going to run. Why? Because it would take a bare bones minimum of $5 million to even have a chance.
Really?
And there was no way we could raise that. And it drove me nuts because not that I want to be in Congress. I want to be effective in Congress and influential. And now since then, or prior to that, I had tried to run for city council. There were 3 seats open out of 8 candidates, and I came in 4th. Missed it by 1 slot. And then I ran for school board, 4 years ago? I think it was 4 years ago. And 2018, I ran for school board, and I did not get that one. I didn't even get close on that one. I was slaughtered. But it was funny, though. The opponent was running unopposed. That's why I decided to run. So I figure if she's going to win, I'm going to make her work for it. I mean, she had no signs, nothing. She didn't care. The moment I got in the race, boy, her signs started popping up. She started spending the money. I made her work for it at least. But what I learned through those 3 experiences of considering running and the 2 that I did is I'm kind of glad I do what I do, because I really do believe that I'm more effective on the outside. You get into Congress, you're one of 535 voices. And that's tough. But out here, I get enough people behind me. I get enough word. That's the reason why you folks in the chat room are so important, getting the word out about what we do here. I think we're much more effective. Now, that said, everybody has their different ways of being effective. I've got a friend of mine named, his nickname is Slim, out here in the Temecula area. And right now he stands almost every day when school's letting out at the high school up the street, Chaparral High School, with a sign waving at people, tall black guy, with a sign that says no CRT, no sex ed. I mean, it's like 4 things on a sign. He's waving, he's got the flag, he's got the sign going, and the kids are coming out of school, and he's on this corner. They got to walk by as they're crossing the street, and all the parents are there, and there's traffic, and he's out there. He's got that sign up, and he's there almost every single day. Every Tuesday when I'm coming in, he's already there. School wasn't even out yet. He's already there, like an hour or 2 before school even let out, with a sign. That's his way of being effective. We all have our different skill sets.
Yeah, but there's a couple people I'd say that about, that they're better off. I like them much more as an activist than when they become politicians. And one in particular, you know who I'm thinking of. But my buddy Adam Kokesh, I used to always tell him that. You're a great activist.
That's not to say that we shouldn't have good people running. We need good people running, but we need the people who are more in tune with that kind of thing. I mean, it's like my friend Melissa Melendez. I mean, she's awesome as a person holding office. Now she's terming out here in California, so she won't. So as state senator now, because we have term limits, in which I have a real problem with. I think it's been a mess, but we'll talk about term limits some other time. But for her, she made and I mean, we're talking a super majority for the Democrats, and she had them nervous still. She was so good at dealing with them up there in Sacramento. So some people, that's their niche. I really believe mine is being on the outside. But anyway, let's wrap this up with the end of this paragraph. Anyway, so we talked about treaties. He shall have power, and with the advice and consent of the Senate, to make treaties, provided 2/3 of senators present concur. Then it says, and he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors and other ministers and consuls, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. In other words, even adding people to the federal government, the state legislatures before the 17th Amendment had say. Confirmation hearings, the senators. It took the representatives that the state legislatures appointed. This is important because, once again, they're going to look at it from a different point of view. There's an oversight mechanism there that doesn't work if these people are democratically voted in, because it's a whole different way of looking at what this is. Now, I want you to notice here, though, it says that he shall nominate. Now, I hate to be a word Nazi for some people, but I hate it when people say, well, the president appoints, Supreme Court judges. No, he doesn't. He nominates them. They're not appointed till the Senate says it's okay. All right. So there's
Doug,
that.
Doug, can I take you back? Let me take you back to the 2/3 to ratify a treaty.
Okay.
Yeah. I read that, and since I've been through your class a few times, I'm starting to get an idea of how the founding fathers thought. And it seems to me that requiring more than a majority for treaties showed just how much they wanted to avoid foreign entanglements.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 2/3 is a tough number to reach, especially when the factions are battling. And usually when you have two factions battling, AKA political parties, it's hard to get 2/3. So that means you're going to have people from both sides willing to. It better be a damn good treaty because it's going to take 2/3.
Yep,
How did we get talked into that 17th Amendment? Asked Sue Ward. Warhamster, how often have I heard that question?
Yeah, well, it's a
common one, and it's one we're going to have to answer another time because we're at the top of the hour. And
well, let me just briefly suggest, and this is coming from the book that you referred to me, my FDR, my exploited father-in-law.
Okay.
I'm just going to read this.
Which is a very good book. There's a lot of juicy stuff in there.
In 1912, the Democratic Party headquarters in New York City was located on Lower Fifth Avenue. A good friend of mine, then a young man, spent considerable time at the headquarters working on sort of a messenger boy. He was the son of a well-known New York City family of Judaic background and related to me the following intriguing story which occurred right there before his eyes. Occasionally, on a Saturday morning in summer of 1912, Bernard Baruch would walked into the Democratic headquarters with Woodrow Wilson in tow, leading him like one would lead a poodle on a string. Wilson with quite solemn face, with quite solemn face and appearance, dressed in dark formal clothes, having just arrived in New York from Trenton. According to my friend, Wilson would be given his special indoctrination course in politics by several of the top advisors assembled there. The course consisted chiefly of outlining to him and agreeing in principle to these 5 things: aiding and pushing through the projected Federal Reserve Bank legislation through Congress when Paul Warburg approved the final draft and proposed the act then being worked on. 2, aiding and changing the method of electing U.S. senators by establishing a direct vote by the people, which provided a more control over the Senate by the professional politicians. 3, agreeing, and that was the 17th Amendment. 3, agreeing to the aid and introduce the graduated personal income tax, which was brought over here from England to drain off the results of the individual initiative, and that's the 16th Amendment. 4, if called upon to lend a sympathetic ear and aid indicated policy if war should break out in Europe, and that was, of course, was the First World War. And then number 5 is to lend a thoughtful ear to recommendations made by policy in respect to the key cabinet posts. Wilson dutifully received and absorbed his indoctrination, shook hands around, and then departed, whereupon the leaders and advisors went into the back room of the headquarters, shut the door, and had a big belly laugh. Someone would then ask, "How's our other candidate doing?" The other candidate was Theodore Roosevelt, of the Bull Moose leader. Hence the strong support that the steering committee in the 1912 went into the both Woodrow Wilson and Theodore Roosevelt, who lined up against Taft. It appeared that the President Taft had not been very receptive and disapproved of the political desires expressed by the elite. Therefore,
now, real quick, I want to ask you something real quick. Do you have the book in your hand?
I do not. Okay. This is a screen. I took a.
All right, because off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact year. But do you remember what year it was published?
I want to say it was
1930s.
1930.
No, it's in the 60s.
No. I'm sorry. It was like 1949.
The book was published in the 60s. My point is this. This is not something that some recent conservative wrote. This is someone who was still in fairly recent memory of those previous years, decades, and knew all the people that were involved. This, first of all. Second of all, this is someone who had an inside track. This was FDR's son-in-law, and he wasn't on the inside track just because he was FDR's son-in-law. He came from a family that was already on the inside track because these people married with each other. So this is not like some guy who's just, well, what I heard was, this is a very legitimate testimony as to what happened. And what he told us there, folks, is it was all by plan.
Mm-hmm.
They knew long before. So now you are in the state legislature, and the 17th Amendment's before you, and you're being told, you know what? And remember also, at the time, both parties were proudly progressive, by the way.
Yeah.
And you're being told the leadership says you're going to vote for this. And if you don't, say goodbye to re-election or serving on any committees. Your call.
And
Sorry,
the
guys, I
same-
didn't put the poll up today. A little bit of a brain fart, I guess. My apology. You know what? To come to think of it, I didn't even post it in the Patriot Street Fighter chat. So that's kind of why I think that's why the numbers are a little bit low. So my
I
apologies.
sent out an email, but hey,
I slipped.
non-political pistachio. I did my
on that.
job.
Well, I think the
I'm
people
teasing.
the people that we have in the chat today are the ones who know and expect to be here every time. They are the
Right.
regulars. So, you know,
Well,
you guys
now chat room. Here's what I have to say to you. Then invite people. Talk about this show in chat rooms of videos and other blogs and other shows and all this sort of stuff. Get people here because this is important stuff. People need to know what's being said here. And
Truly.
you are our way of getting the word out. You are our marketing team, word of mouth.
Yeah.
You're the marketing team, and I would really like you to be a kick. But it goes. Notice we're not charging for this, so this is for no other reason than I want to get this information out to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
You are the marketing team. So marketing team, I would like to see you get to work, and would love to see this show just brimming with people.
I'm not sure if you know Doug, but I've been invited to go to the Clay Clark event in Tulsa for how to expand shows and network with content creators and whatnot. So I'll be pushing this a little bit as well.
Oh, absolutely. Good. And matter of fact, also Warhamster and I are working with a group of people also working on expanding my reach. So between the two and this wonderful chat room group, I mean, between the three of us, chatters, you're part of this. Between the three of us, when I say three of us, I mean Warhamster and I on one, you on the other, and the chat team on the other. Between the three of us, I think we can make everything explode like it should.
Stephanie wants to know if you've signed up for Truth Social and if you're going to be on there.
Not yet, but I am. Yes, that's the plan.
The problem with Doug is Doug does not have an iPhone, and so you can't. I don't think you can apply to be on Truth Social unless you have an iPhone.
You
Really?
cannot. You can get an account. Well, no, you have to be able to download the app at the App Store.
Yeah,
I've got an
on
iPhone
the Apple right now. Well, I'm sure they'll expand over to Android later. Sorry, I don't like Apple products. They're too proprietary.
Yeah, fine.
just me.
I'm not Colt agrees with you.
It's a desktop app that I'm waiting for because I don't. These phones are too small. I don't like typing on a phone.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that too. Also, yeah, I'd rather have it on my desktop too. And I've got a. I heard someone the other day call her laptop because it kept falling apart. She calls it her crap top. But fortunately, I have a pretty good one thanks to certain people in my life. But I've got the laptop. I've got also a desktop that a friend of mine built for me. But I'm working on expanding certain things. Once again, Warhamster and I and some other people are working on stuff. And it's good to see all you here. I need to get out the door because I got to go to San Juan Capistrano next.
Thank you, Douglas. Enjoy your drive and be safe. And we will see you next week.
God bless you, Ron. God bless you, Warhamster. God bless all of you in the chat room.
Yeah. Regardless of whether or not I'm here, the show will go on. So
very good.
So, okay, guys. Have a great day. Good to see you all, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Good night, all.